Coming up on 2.5 Geeks, we'll be talking about tiny, tiny PCs, a massive 4K monitor, contest details, and a heck of a lot more.
It rocked in the benchmarks. We're going to up the ante a little bit. Processing power, I kind of understand this.
Welcome back to 2.5 Geeks. I'm Ayaz Akhtar alongside Dave Altavella, Marco Geppetta. I've now just made them one person because I didn't even say and. So now you are together. How are you both doing? Let's start with Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I'm clearly a little less than adept at tweeting this very moment, but other than that, I'm just fine, thank you. And you?
I am terrific today because today is Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday. I've had a pleasant day. Marco, have you had a pleasant day?
I have had a pleasant day. I'm doing good, and your intro reminds me of a story from elementary school that's only going to make me laugh, but I'm going to tell it anyway. The way you turned Dave and I into one person, it reminded me. I had a kid in my elementary school from kindergarten through 8th grade. I'm still friends with him now. His name was Walter, and he had an older brother who was also in the same school called Frank, and these two looked like twins. You could not tell them apart. They looked exactly the same. So when we were messing with him and we'd tease him, we used to call him Frank and Walter, and he would be so pissed. But you just reminded me of that story, so I thought I'd tell it.
I like that. I like that.
Frank and Walter is awesome.
It's kind of like roses are red. It's kind of like roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I.
No, it's nothing like that.
Frank and Walter, is also one of it's one of Marco's security answers. It's like a childhood best friend, Frank and Walter.
It's my pin. It's my pin at the ATM, Frank and Walter.
Yeah,
the longest pin ever. All right, let's actually
money now,
let's talk about what we're here to talk about, hardware, because that's what we're going to do today. Dave, you've got an Asus Chromebox small form factor PC review up right now. It's a little tiny PC. It's running on an Intel processor, but it's really cheap. What could you tell us about the Asus Chromebox?
It's fairly cheap, and it is running on an Intel Core i3. The model I got was a Core i3 dual core Haswell, their 4th generation Core series architecture. Here it is right here. It is a tiny little brick of joy, 5 inches square by 1.7 inches thick. And as you can see, a couple USB 3 ports here. On the back side is where all the action is. 2 more USB 3 ports. Let me get it there. Oh, that's much better. Okay. And gigabit Ethernet, HDMI, and what am I missing? DisplayPort. And, of course, the power jack. So, as you can see, real tiny little small form factor PC. Actually, really nice design. Nothing crazy in terms of construction. It's a plastic flat black matte finish. But a nice, very quiet small form factor PC, and it is driven by the Chrome OS. So the proverbial Google Chrome OS in a browser model. You are working with that in this implementation, and but actually very quiet, under load, can't even hardly hear it. You have to put your ear up to it to hear it, and so it has a lot of horsepower and capability. 4 gig of RAM, 16 gig SSD, not a ton of capacity, but it's very quick, in a small package. You just have to work within the confines of that Google Chrome OS that takes some getting used to, but I enjoyed it.
Now, does it seem like a serviceable machine to have? I mean, if you're going to get a Chromebox or a Chromebook or anything running Chrome OS, it seems like the apps are pretty limited. Do you think there's room in your house for a Chromebox or anybody else's?
It's interesting. There are a lot of usage models you can think of for this type of device. Certainly in the enterprise and in education, where Google Apps, Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, all of those Google Cloud Service, Office, and productivity apps that Google offers are available and really can sort of satisfy the mainstream sort of basic functionality to get work and education done. And of course, you've got internet browsing capabilities. But yeah, when you get on the Chrome store, you're talking about a situation where most of the apps are online or connected apps, where you think you're installing something, but really what you're installing is a shortcut on the device to a website, and that website then provides that service for that app that you're looking for. So, for example, you can jump in Netflix, Spotify, Pandora, all these places, take you right to the website. It's been qualified by Google to run in Chrome, and everything's functional and it's all good and it just works. But it's a web-driven interface. There are a few offline apps that you can run in offline mode. You don't need an internet connection for, and certainly the Google Office and productivity apps are part of that suite. For example, where you can run in offline mode. Google also, by the way, gives you 100 gig of Google Drive cloud storage with with their license for a Chrome device, whether it be a Chromebook or in this case the Chromebox. Actually, I'm not sure that's standard. Let me qualify that for every Chrome device. It's certainly standard for the Chromebox. It's in the bundle, but yeah, the other usage model in the home is as a sort of utility computing device, whether it be in the kitchen or in the living room, or maybe as a family PC, as a home theater PC. It's certainly got the capability if you are good with running things in a browser. And here you're talking about, again, whether it be YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, any of those video services, they're all available. Plus, you get the internet and all of the internet connected services that are out there that run in Chrome. It's just not a full home theater PC experience where you could maybe install like Steam and download some games that might be able to run on this. By the way, you've got Intel integrated graphics here, HD 4400 graphics in our Core i3 driven model. There are some other lower end CPUs from Intel and even some higher end SKUs, I think, as well. But I think it's a fairly capable device, and for what you'd use it for, maybe you're not going to have your media player of choice and things of that nature. Real hardcore home theater PC buffs are going to find this to be limited because of that. But I mean, it can get the job done for a good portion of the market as a home theater PC, a family computer, or certainly an education of the enterprise for sort of basic productivity stuff.
And anytime I see these small form factor PCs, the first thing I always think of is home theater applications, just because they will fit in that space really nicely and they don't look like an eyesore. But I don't think it would be something like I would use, because I'm all about networked video, and that's not exactly the same experience. But there's another small form factor PC that seems like it might be a better or more suitable kind of solution to someone like me, and it's the CyberPower PC Zeus Mini. Is it 780? This is this thing's, I think, double the price of the Chromebox, but it's a real full-fledged PC, probably. Right?
Yeah, it's more like 5 or 6 times the price of the Chromebox. But something just dawned on me before I talk about the Zeus. Dave, does that little box have a card reader on it?
Yeah, it certainly does. And actually, I think we moved on a little bit too quickly there. Has a flash card reader for expansion. Has those USB ports for external storage. And certainly it will pick up, network attack storage as well. So, again, I think it's about the media players that might not be available to you and how you might manage your files. But you can get media into this device and use it.
I'm asking for the card slot, because you could probably boot OpenELEC XBMC right from an SD card and have dual boot with Chrome OS or OpenELEC if you want to stream stuff from your network. Just something that popped in my head as you were talking.
That would be nice. Okay. I haven't been able to get into the BIOS yet to trigger where it could boot from. Gotcha. But yeah, theoretically. What's also going to be interesting for this thing is what the open source community does for it as well. Could be some good stuff coming down the pipe.
All right, so onto the Zeus Mini. I have to run through the specs to give you the full impact of this machine. So the Zeus Mini that we reviewed was powered by an Intel Core i7 4770K, so the fastest Haswell processor out there. It had an EVGA superclocked GeForce GTX 780, so super high-end graphics card. 16 gigs of G.Skill RAM, clocked at 1866, so fairly high-end memory. 120 gig Samsung SSD plus a 2 terabyte hard drive for bulk storage, a Gigabyte Z87 based motherboard with built-in Wi-Fi, Cooler Master liquid cooling, slot loading DVD burner, plus a 80 plus certified 650 watt power supply from Corsair. Sounds like a really high-end machine, and CyberPower crammed all of that into a chassis that's only 4.4 inches wide, 13 inches tall, and 17.4 inches deep. So you're talking about a high-end gaming PC in a box, you know, maybe double the width of a small pizza box. It's pretty crazy the kind of horsepower they fit into this guy.
But since they crammed everything into that small package, I did notice that in your review of it, there was some complaints when it comes to servicing this machine because they kind of crammed everything together.
Yes and no. So one of the great things that CyberPower PC does with this box is they use all off-the-shelf components. It's a standard motherboard, standard graphics card, standard drives. Everything about it can use off-the-shelf components. The case is custom from CyberPower, though. So accessing some of the parts is as simple as removing a side panel and, you know, popping out a few screws or a brace here and there. Seth, our editor who did the full review, found that if you wanted to access the drives, though, there's tons of disassembly required. It's sort of, you know, a negative for the machine. I personally wouldn't give it too many demerits for that, because to cram all this hardware in a box that small, you have to make some sort of concessions. And if that means having to remove a few screws to upgrade it, if you're ever going to upgrade a machine of this type, I don't think that's a huge deal. Now, in terms of pricing, I think this is where people are going to go, ooh, that's a little pricey. So the box we tested was almost $1,900. Now you can go with lower end configurations and get something cheaper, or even go higher end and pay a little more. But this box is not cheap. So you pay for that customization and the ability to use off-shelf components, but it's a really high-end machine, beautiful machine in a nice small form factor. If you're looking for a small high-end machine, this should definitely be on your short list.
Yeah, I saw the price started at $685, and that's what I was saying, like it's like double. But
Yeah.
the $1,900 configuration you had, performance was really solid from what I've read. Is there any other notes about this diminutive PC?
Yes. So you mentioned performance was good. Obviously, performance is going to be great with a Core i7 and SSD, 16 gigs of RAM, and a GTX 780. But more interestingly, if you like this machine, stick around till the end of the podcast, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Little tease.
Yeah, otherwise, there's no reason to ever continue the podcast, Marco. That's what you're implying.
No, I just want to
not
make
true.
sure that if someone is particularly jazzed about this box, they'll be particularly jazzed if they stick around all the way to the end.
Particularly.
Interesting. Let's serve up our double dose of Dell products. The first thing we got up is the Dell XPS 13. It's the 2014 version. It's got a 13-inch screen, touchscreen, and I think it has an HD display. Is that right, or is it over HD, Dave?
No, it's HD. Nah, it's 1080, full 1080. Yep.
Oh, nice. On a 13-inch, that's pretty cool. So this is the XPS line. This is Dell's, like, I would say, it's like not exact. Is this the top of the line right now? Because they used to have that weird Adamo line. That's gone now, right?
Yeah, no, this is the premium top shelf product.
So how was the XPS 13?
The XPS 13 is it's a nice machine. I actually took a look at it before we sent it on to our editor, Jennifer Johnson, who did the review for us. But I saw the previous version of this machine as well. And in terms of, the mechanical design, Dell hasn't changed much there, with the exception of some new options and displays. And now, they had some lower res displays as well as the full 1920 by 1080p display that they have on the 2014 version. You also get touch available to you now as well with Windows 8. And really, it's a very nice premium notebook by Dell. It's sort of, for me, in the top like 2 or 3 Ultrabooks in the 13-inch form factor that I would probably consider to use myself, sort of editor's choice, if you will. It would be the X1 Carbon by Lenovo, the XPS 13, and maybe one more that I'd throw in there. I'm trying to think of, but for me, I'm not quite as fond as I am with the sharper edges in the Lenovo product as I am with the round edges in the XPS line. But it is a very nice thin, and if you like that rounded, sort of contoured look in the clamshell design, it's really, really well built. You also get this carbon fiber construction underneath, and in the palm rest area, it's a composite carbon fiber material, and polymer carbon fiber composition. So very well designed, beautiful full HD display, 350 nits of brightness, 800:1 contrast ratio. We tested the version built on a Core i7 4500U with 8 gig of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. So the thing screamed through the benchmarks. Integrated Intel HD 4400 graphics there as well. And so it did very well. And we've sort of come to expect in a certain echelon of Ultrabooks this level of performance, and certainly it hit it. As tested, and here's the kicker, we got the higher end model with, again, 8 gig of RAM, 256 gigs of hard drive, 1649, 256 gigs, excuse me, of SSD storage, 1649, as well as that Core i7 CPU. So it wasn't a cheap configuration. You can configure it a little bit lower, but we really liked it.
Yeah, this is a high-end machine, so you're going to be paying a high-end price. Would you even say to people to bother with a 1049 model? Because that's where it starts at. But it seems like, if I'm reading this right, the touchscreen, you have to add that as an option.
Yeah, you do. It is a little bit of an upcharge. Honestly, I think for what you can get with Intel processors these days for notebook computing, you could definitely save a few pesos and go with something less than a Core i7. They've got some Core i5 models in the mix. And I think especially with the new Haswell architecture, you're not sacrificing as much on the multimedia side because the graphics core is fairly similar across the SKUs. You could definitely trim down and get a 128 gig SSD and save some money. 4 gig of RAM, probably, especially with that SSD serving up your storage, 4 gig of RAM probably isn't going to feel a whole lot different than 8 gig of RAM with Windows 8, unless you're doing some real heavy-duty crunching, maybe video editing or what have you, on this machine. So, yeah, absolutely, considering the, $999, price range SKUs that are out there, it's definitely an option. It's something you might want to consider. I think it's a great machine. I think Dell does a nice job with this machine. It's definitely a good value. The SKU we tested is sort of the no compromise, I want it all SKU for $1649, and you get what you get. Get what you pay for, I should say.
You get what you get when you pay for it, I guess. That's
true. Right, yeah. Exactly.
Let's talk. We've got the Dell Ultra Sharp 4K monitor. We've got to talk about this. It's a 31.5-inch monitor running 4K resolution. It's got similar styling. It's got that rounded corner thing going. It's got that black and silver look. Marco, what can you tell us about this? What is it, the UP3214Q?
Yes, that is the model. The Dell UP3214Q Ultra HD monitor. So I can tell you a lot about this because I've been messing around with a few of the 4K monitors that are available right now. Let me run through the specs quick. As you mentioned, 4K display, so 3840 pixels by 2160 pixels in a 31.5-inch diagonal display. So ultra high pixel density versus anything really that's been out there the last few years. This latest gen of 4K monitors takes the pixel density to a whole nother level. If you think about that, it's 4 1080p screens crammed into 31.5 inches diagonal. So to give you an idea of the kind of clarity that these screens are capable of. So this display is very similar to the Asus and Sharp 4K, the high-end 4K displays that have been out there for a little while. It's using what's known as an IGZO panel. It's indium gallium zinc oxide versus a TN panel or something like that from previous gen displays. Now, they are fantastic screens to look at. There's one in front of me right now. When they're working, they are awesome. Everything is so clear. The IGZO displays have great white balanced. Whites are very evenly lit. There's not tons of backlight bleed. They're really high-end displays with great image quality, good color reproduction. There's not much negative to say in terms of the panel quality. Now, to get these screens working on PCs right now, though, you have two ways to do it. You can connect via HDMI and get that high resolution, but then you're limited to a 30 hertz refresh rate at that high res. At lower resolutions, you can get a higher refresh rate. If you want to get a 60 hertz refresh rate at that high res, you need to use a DisplayPort 1.2 capable graphics card and run in what's called MST mode, multi-stream transport mode, and that will get you 60 hertz at that 3840 by 2160 res. But it does it by basically splitting the screen into two separate displays. So you get lots of weirdness when you do this. Over the last few months, I have tested tons of cables, a couple screens, a slew of graphics cards, and this is sort of universal. There's definitely some maturation that needs to happen in this space. You'll see weird things like one day you'll turn your system on and only half your screen has a display. The next day you'll turn it on and the whole thing is lit, but it's running at half res. Sometimes it won't come out of sleep. There's also a huge batch, like many DisplayPort cables out there, even some cables included by manufacturers with the displays that aren't VESA compliant, and they actually pump 3.3 volts back into your PC and cause all sorts of weirdness. So as cool as these displays are, and wait, I should say these are not Dell only issues. In terms of the 4K displays, this Dell screen is absolutely awesome, and it's the one I'd buy because it has extra features that others don't, and it's also about $1,000 cheaper than the Sharp and Asus screens that are out there. But there's lots of stuff and weirdness to deal with if you want to be on this bleeding edge.
So getting a 4K display right now might not be the smartest idea if you want a consistent experience with this. And also, there's got to be a limitation as to what you can do with this, right? If it's running this crazy resolution, assume you've got everything working. Like, does this really provide you with a better work experience? I mean, you're using one right now.
Right. So yes and no. The first limitation is you need a ton of horsepower if you want to game on it. So you need a graphics setup capable of pushing 4 1080p displays, essentially. So you want a beefy graphics setup if you want to run everything at native res at high image quality settings. A pair of Radeon 290X cards, Titans, GTX 780s, they all provide a good gaming experience on this kind of setup. The other consideration is scaling in Windows isn't perfect right now. Give you an example, Adobe's Creative Suite. Somebody considering a monitor like this probably wants to run Adobe apps on it, Photoshop, Premiere, what have you. The toolbars don't scale in Adobe apps. So you have all these pixels to work with. You may even be able to edit your photos without scaling, which for graphics professionals is a big deal. But the tools are super, super tiny in the Adobe apps. You also see some weirdness scaling web pages when there's animations on them. Some apps, have Ultra HD, or I should say high DPI support, and they scale beautifully, while others look sort of fuzzy when they're scaled. So there's tons of stuff you have to contend with. If you've been a long-time enthusiast and you're used to, I come from a day when I used to have to tweak QEMM to get DOS games running, properly. So I'm not adverse to tweaking, getting things working right. If you're that kind of user, you'll probably dig it and really be wowed to have the pixels in front of you. If you want to have something that's plug and play and you're never going to touch it, I would definitely wait.
Yeah, it's also not cheap. It's $2,700, and this is actually one of the lower priced models, right?
Yeah, so you can actually find it street price at Amazon for $24.99 right now. Sounds insane, but 30-inch displays with half the resolution have been $1,200 forever. So I'm not saying it's easy to justify, but you can see where that price comes from for this kind of bleeding edge technology.
One of the massive monitor.
One of the users in the chat room said OS X, and this is a good commentary. OS X Beta has 4K controls now, which is nice, and I think Microsoft's got to step it up on the 4K front as well. Well,
Microsoft's actually done a really, really good job. I should say, with Windows 8.1, if on a clean setup, starting fresh, installing Windows 8.1 from scratch on a machine with one of these displays connected, it will detect the high DPI, set your scaling all automatically. So you actually can have it configured nicely with minimal tweaking. It's just when you use them over the long haul, odds are some of these little quirks I've mentioned are going to pop up. And it's not a Windows-only thing. This is because There's no single scaler that can push these resolutions.
Yeah.
DisplayPort 1, 2, it's not a new spec, but the cable's necessary and the screens are new and the graphics drivers are new. There's just lots of stuff that has to happen to make this perfect, and it hasn't happened, but it is awesome when it works.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem thing. Sure.
Yep.
It'll get there in time, and when 4K is the standard, I'm sure all this will be completely. By standard, I mean like every freaking monitor is a 4K. Right now, we're still seeing so many various resolutions because 4K is like the top of the line. When 8K comes out, I'm sure 4K will be totally figured out. Completely.
But the other great thing, the absolutely fantastic thing about 4K displays for me,
fantastic,
finally is going to, sort of tell the graphics companies we need more GPU horsepower again. For so long, we've gotten to the point where a $60, $80 graphics card can push a 1080p display basically no problem. You cannot push one of these with a cheap graphics card if you want any kind of playable frame rate at native res. So the GPU guys are on notice. The screens are going to get affordable. You can get a $620 monitor from Dell that's 4K. The disadvantage is it maxes at a 30 hertz refresh rate, and it uses a TN panel. But you are going to see affordable 4K displays through this year and the beginning of next. And the graphics guys have to make chips that can push them for gamers, so I'm excited.
Let's touch base on something there you mentioned, and I gotta believe. I mean, it sounds like an interesting product because it's cheap, and I saw the Dell 4K display myself. We saw it at CES this year, the cheap one. 30 hertz for gaming is useless, right?
Yes and no.
Pretty close to it. It hurts. Put it that way.
Here's the advantage. So first of all, that Dell, that TN display, lots of folks are like, "Oh, boo, TN." That's as high-end a TN panel as I've seen. It looked great when we saw it live.
Beautiful.
You can also push that display with a single HDMI cable or DisplayPort, and not have the weirdness of using MST mode that the higher-end displays use. On the desktop, using 30 hertz. It's noticeable and it does detract from the experience. Mouse cursor movements aren't perfectly smooth, but it is absolutely something you can get used to. Gaming at 30 hertz, if you turn off VSync, there's no lag, but tons of tearing. So figure 4 times the amount of tearing that you'd be used to on a 1080p display. Turn VSync on and it's unplayable, man. The lag associated with mouse movements is crazy. So yeah, there's trade-offs there too.
Yeah, it's clearly for me, that it seems like, and it's sort of a almost an oxymoron because that display is ideal for professionals who would need, by the way, those Adobe tools that don't scale well right now, for things like that. But for gamers that are saying, "Oh man, look at this beautiful 4K display," and I've got a pair of 780 Ti's that I want to strap together and drive that sucker and game at super high res. Not at 30 hertz. It's not going to be fun.
You can get you can drop the res to 1080 and get a higher refresh rate and have it be good, and it'll scale perfectly. It's 4x scaling, so it'll scale perfectly, on the display. But you're not getting that true native res.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Well, now that we've thoroughly depressed everyone with the horrors of gaming on a 4K display currently,
we gave them all a heads up.
Let's raise some spirits, shall we? Let's actually talk about. I believe you guys are giving away something that we've actually talked about on this very episode. Who wants to handle this?
You want me to do it, boss?
Marco? What's that?
You want me to handle it?
Go for it.
So that sexy little Zeus mini box that I talked about a few minutes ago, that really high-end gaming rig. We're giving it away. Could be yours. Anybody watching this right now, you have a shot at winning this box. We keep our contests as simple as possible. Come to HotHardware, like our Facebook page, like CyberPower PC's Facebook page, and provide useful commentary on the site. We don't want spammers just coming by to say, "Hey, nice, thanks, great." If you come by the site, you contribute to our discussions in our forum, in our news, on our article pages. Get yourself noticed on the site. Your name will be in the running, and we are going to randomly pick a winner at the end of the month, and the machine could be yours.
I'll chirp in a little bit. I'll chirp in a little bit on that as well. we run these contests, and as Marco said, we try and keep them simple. A couple of Facebook likes or whatever, G plus like, whatever, just to get in, so to speak, sort of check the box. But then to get noticed, we encourage people to have a conversation in the comments and in the forum or wherever across the site to get yourself noticed, to be visible. And we do that because obviously we're trying to get people engaged and bring people in as an awareness to the site and build the community. And so that's why we do it. We're giving back, obviously, some really cool gear here. I mean, this is a beautiful machine. Obviously, a little bit of press for CyberPower. I mean, they're good folks giving back as well. So a little bit of advertising for their brand just by the mention, right? But it's very transparent. Come, spend some time with us, and we give you free stuff. Really cool free stuff. So there you go.
Freaking awesome PC. I'm looking at the specs. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not eligible to win, so I can't do. But you guys can. So if you're wondering, hey, where can I find the links to what we talked about, the contest details, any of the stories we talked about, HotHardware.com has everything you need right there. Also, if you want to go around the web and you're like, I want to see Hot Hardware content elsewhere, like, you know what, I love Hot Hardware, I want to see it on Twitter, there's an option for you, twitter.com/HotHardware. If you want to go and watch some moving pictures, I'm a big fan of the video stuff, youtube.com/HotHardwareVids. If you want to be on Facebook, you want to be social with Hot Hardware, you can do that. Facebook.com/HotHardware. And on Google+, plus.google.com/+HotHardware. I always almost crack up when I say it because that's actually the URL. Easiest thing to do is just to search for it over there. And also, if you really, you're like, hey, I want to get Hot Hardware content in my email inbox, you can actually do that too. Just go to hothardware.com, look on the right side, look for a little email icon, and you can actually get newsletters and such emailed to you. So you could just be like super lazy and they'll just send you content. It's just amazing how you can't escape Hot Hardware.
That's it. Yeah, you can sit on your couch and it'll come to you. It's a beautiful thing.
Which makes sense because I write a lot of the content from my couch, so it goes full circle.
From couch to couch, Hot Hardware serving you. Any other closing notes before we wrap up this episode?
Thanks to our friends at GFQ.
Oh, right. I should really thanks. We stream this show live at gfqlive.tv. I've completely forgot. Andrew, who's running the board today and runs the network, is making my life a lot easier because I used to produce this show and switch and do all that stuff on my own here. But thanks to guys from Queen's Network, I don't have to do that anymore. So he's doing all the work for us, and I appreciate that. And that's why I should have thanked him, but I completely forgot because it's going so smoothly. I'm just completely in a different world. Thanks, Dave, for reminding me.
It's tough when the old man has to remind you about stuff.
Well, if I had two Bloody Marys this morning, maybe I would have remembered.
I need to apologize for last week or our last podcast. I was trying to thank Andrew for turning all the knobs and dials, but when it came out of my mouth, it came out Dobbs and Niles, and my wife's been making fun of me for a week. So apologies for flubbing that one last podcast.
I thought you were making some kind of Harry Potter / Frasier joke that I was like, okay, I just don't know that.
I'm just stupid. No, I'm just stupid.
Potter Frasier.
Wow. I always figured that you're being far too smart for me to understand. So that's the default, and I'll make fun of you later for that. I think that wraps it up for us, though. Thanks for stopping by.